want to earn more? Work less and enjoy what you do each day. It's no secret, it can be done. This podcast with Dr. T will not only educate and inspire you, it will also teach you how to do more and be more with the time you already have. It will be like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of your business. Here is your host, Tyson Franklin.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. Today with me is Dr. K, Dr. Fern Kazlow from New York City. And last week we did part 2 of a 3-part series about the top 10 branding mistakes. And so far we've covered 6, and today we're going to cover the next 4. So if you haven't listened to the other 2 episodes, that's fine. You can go back and listen to them later on, and there will be links in the show notes. But sit back, relax. If you're driving your car, chill out and have a listen to Dr. K talk about the next 4 branding mistakes. So Dr. K, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back here with you.
So do you want to just do a very quick review of what the first 6 branding mistakes were?
Absolutely. So the first branding mistake is letting others define you, letting others define your brand. It could be clients, colleagues, or your competition. Number 2 is not backing up your branding, failing to keep your brand promise. Number 3 is not having an aligned brand strategy. Number 4 is not power connecting. Number 5 is not infusing your branding every place. And number 6 is failure to lead your brand.
As we spoke about each of those over the last 2 recordings, there's just been so much insight. And you were a little concerned sometimes, did you give too much information? And I think when it comes to branding, I don't think you can give too much information. So I'm really looking forward to the next 4. So let's jump straight into it. Number 7.
Okay, number 7 is not aligning your brand culture. One of the things people talk about today, and one of the ways that they position themselves, is by having a brand culture, having brand values. And this is something like values of giving back, values of family time for their employees as well as for themselves, going green. And it can even be things like, do we create a relaxed environment like a restaurant? Stay as long as you like, or is it eat, move on? So it's having that clarity about what your culture is. And then much as we said, infusing it every place, it's really infusing this every place. So if your strategy is about being relaxed and living relaxed, you don't want to have a restaurant that's about order your food and get moving.
Yeah.
Okay, New Year's Eve, I was in a restaurant and it was, they were jammed, but it wasn't so out of character for them to say, eat your food, and then they brought the check. And we actually went New Year's Eve someplace else to go have coffee and dessert and bring in the new year. So it was a little bit out of alignment with who they usually were. So it wasn't that much of a surprise. It was a little bit like I'd seen it sometimes, but it wasn't in line with the graciousness that they usually displayed. Now I give them, it was New Year's Eve. It was very crowded. They were the best Japanese food in the little town we were in. But it was a little bit of and I know when I talked to my friends about going back a few weeks later, they actually were a little hesitant because they wanted to go someplace where they could sit, where they had certain kind of customer service, and they could just spend the evening. So you want to have your culture, and then you want it to be very alive and very visible. If you're about giving back, what are you giving back? Are you going to do anything for your clients if they give back? Are you going to recognize that? How are you going to do that? If going green is important, then you want to be, doing what you say. One of the places that we're seeing this a lot now is people in the States talking about the importance of equal pay for men and women, gender pay equality. And it's interesting when you start to look at those numbers. In some ways, some places women are actually getting more money when you hold certain factors equal. But one of the things that's been striking is some of the people that are the biggest voices of pay equity. If you look at their own organizations, they're not living it. And it's much more of an offense when you're somebody that speaks to a certain culture and then you don't uphold it. So you want to, if you're not going to be living a certain value, and values are one of the most important things. In fact, to millennials, the values that a business promotes are one of the things that gets loyalty. Now, I think it's true every place, but we're seeing with millennials that it's something that stands out even more. So don't espouse, it's good to espouse a value for your brand. Don't do it if it's not real. Don't do it if it's not authentic. And don't do it if it's just going to be a throwaway statement that's not going to be reflected and infused throughout the way you do business and the way you live your life.
Because I was going to say consistency must be really important with this too. Because when you're going back to that restaurant example, if there's a certain culture that's built into that business, but then all of a sudden when it's a busy night like New Year's Eve, they totally change that culture just to get more people in, more people out, because they're just concerned about the profits. Long term, they could be losing a lot more money because people like your friend said, no, I don't want to go there. I want to go somewhere else where we can actually take a little bit longer. So they weren't consistent in their culture when it becomes super busy.
Exactly. And I was a little bit embarrassed because I brought these friends to this restaurant with a certain expectation.
It was your recommendation. That's even worse when that happens.
My friends had been there before, but one of them wasn't. And so it was my recommendation. I knew the food was good, and I'd always had a different experience. So when they behaved that way in and out, it was something that not only did my friends not want to go back, but I was a little bit miffed because it didn't put me in the best light.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, especially if businesses rely on referrals from other people and other businesses. And I know, having the podiatry clinic, you'd receive a referral from, say, a physiotherapist or another doctor, and you always wanted to make sure you gave the best treatment you possibly could because you knew that feedback was going back to that referral source. You want to maintain that same consistent culture and service every time.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with it in and out. I mean, there's certain places, for example, that if you're going to the theater in New York City, that you can get in and out quickly. And so there it's an advantage to get in and out and to know you can count on that.
And sometimes the name will give that away. Like in Cairns, we have a place called Faster Pasta. Well, what do you think they do fast? Fast pasta. So if you want to go to the basketball, you go there, eat your pasta fast, they get you out, you're at the basketball so the next group of people can come in.
Exactly. So it's not about it being better or worse to get people in and out or to let people stay. It's about being very clear so that if you say to somebody, we can get in and out and get to the theater, and then you're sitting there and you're late and you can't get service, that's not so good. Same as New Year's Eve. If you're expecting to spend the evening and before you sat down, they've got the menu, they're taking your order. And before you're done, they didn't even ask us if we wanted dessert. It was jarring, but it also was that issue of it reflected back on me because I had made a recommendation based on an expectation of what they were like. So very important today to have values that your company stands for, and then important that you really live them.
That's a great way to start this podcast episode. That is a fantastic point because I think a lot of people could look at a lot of different businesses that have exceeded, met, and not met their expectations for one reason or another. And sometimes it's that it hasn't aligned, the brand hasn't aligned with the culture that they've become used to and expected. And sometimes you only need a bad experience once and you won't go back again.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes away the credibility. I mean, we have a mayor in New York City, and I don't like to get into politics, but we have a mayor in New York that I don't think is our most loved. But one of the things he's gotten a lot of flack for is he talks about green, green, green. And then he goes to a gym where he has to take his SUV to drive a considerable distance instead of, let me tell you, in New York, there's a lot of gyms you could walk to. Or you could take a bus or a train. But he takes his SUV, gas-guzzling SUV, to drive to the gym every day. So you've got to, if he wasn't talking about that as one of his prime values, people would probably not be talking about it unless that was their key issue. But because he espouses the importance of everybody else taking the subway, walking, public transportation, he's in fact going to add an extra $11.50 or $12 onto what it costs me to drive into New York City.
Well, we've just had our federal elections over here, and one of the particular parties was just driving home the message about jobs getting sent overseas and just really bitching and complaining about the parties that have been in power and haven't looked after the local workforce. but then they got all their political stuff printed in China. Got everything printed overseas, didn't get anything printed locally. Yet here they were spouting the message that the government isn't looking after our local jobs, but they didn't get any of their stuff done locally either. It was all shipped overseas to be done, and you sort of go, okay, maybe some of it may have been done local, but majority of it was all done overseas. And you go, hang on, well, that contradicts the message you were just sharing with people.
Right. And we're at a time that those things are not forgiven. There was a time they weren't even noticed. Or if they were noticed, people kind of shrugged and said, that's the way, people do business. Today, these are things that people hold businesses accountable for, and they actually make their decisions. For example, we have a brand here called Tom Shoes. And for every pair you buy, they donate a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Now, I know that my younger daughter, she looks specifically to buy Tom shoes, not because they're the greatest shoes, not because they're a pair of shoes, a pair of sneakers. But one of the things that she looks at is the fact that they give back. And so that's why she is a loyal Tom's fan and customer. So this is something very key, especially with the millennial population, but more and more across the board. People are looking to do business with businesses that align with their values. And they're going to call you out if you're not behaving in alignment with what you're espousing. You think it's cool to be green. You think it's cool to say, we're going to give family time off, and then you don't give it. So they're really asking you to practice what you preach, to live to your brand culture, and they're asking for a brand culture. They want to do this not only with people they like and trust, but with people they share values with. And your brand is one of the ways that you communicate your values.
And probably the one person that tells you that what you're doing doesn't match your brand, there'll be 10 people who are thinking it that aren't prepared to tell you. It's like I've seen businesses all go on about you must shop local. For the local community, shopping local is good for the economy, the local economy. Yet they will order certain things from interstate, overseas, wherever. And if you ask them about it, they go, "Oh no, well, I only do that because it's cheaper." You go, well, that then goes against what you're talking about keeping all the money. Yeah, it may be cheaper to order it interstate, but if you ordered it locally, how much more were you really paying to keep the money in the local community and also back up the culture or the brand that you're actually putting out there?
And that goes back to keeping your brand promise. So it's one example of keeping it, but it's keeping it in line with culture. And brand culture is huge today, brand values. So that is a key area. So that's number 7. Number 8 is not valuing your brand. This is huge. People more and more are putting attention into creating a brand, their mission statements, their vision, how they're, messaging, positioning. And then as they operate their business, they kind of, we talked about it before, the way they drop the ball, but they're also just not valuing it. They're not making decisions based on their brand. And that is huge. It's really important. Nobody else is going to value brand if you don't.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you as a leader, as a company, as a CEO, as the way that you show value is if you're considering, what is my brand? What is my product suite? What kind of things do I do? If you just have products all over the place because it's the next idea that you came up with. Well, if your brand isn't like I'm somebody who comes up with ideas all over the place, it's going to weaken it. So you've got to be clear that you are valuing your brand.
Have you got a good example of like a business that has not done that?
Well, yeah, I can give you a great example. A bank that I used to use, and they used to have the motto, they don't anymore, but they used to have a motto of the right relationship is everything.
Okay, that's a good
bank.
motto.
Okay, it was a great motto. And for a while, it was true. And I was a customer for many, many years. And I had somebody that was a rep from the bank that took care of me. They knew my business.
Yeah.
And then the bank started shifting the managers and didn't want them so close. They didn't want them doing so many favors. They didn't want the relationship. Every few months, I had a different branch manager, a different rep assigned to me. And so they were still saying the right relationship is everything. But it wasn't. In fact, I was in I was in a program one day. It was actually a media presentation program, and there were a bunch of employees from this company. And they were talking about how the company really had moved away from that. And it was horrible to work for them. It was horrible to be dealing with the clients because they were saying that the clients were of value and they weren't. So that is one really clear example. I'm actually now watching and thinking about going back to the bank 20 years later. I didn't go near that bank. It was really convenient, but I didn't go near it. Now I've had some people reach out. We've been talking about this issue and whether or not they are servicing small businesses in a way that would make me want to go back.
Yeah.
But that was one example of the right relationship is everything. Not. Another one is American Airlines. They were the first pet-friendly airlines. And then they got not so pet-friendly and not so friendly. So they had to promise a lot of people that had pets were flying American Airlines. And then they stopped.
Oh, so you used to be able to take pets on the plane, and then they said you can't take pets on the plane.
Then they made it more difficult. There was one flight, one of my last flights. I mean, I fly them when I have to, but I don't fly them very often. But I had one flight that I actually paid. I have tiny dogs and big dogs.
Yeah.
And I actually paid more for my little 3-pound dog than I paid for my own seat.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. She was under the seat. She took the place of one of my bags. I couldn't have 2 bags. I could only have one. And I paid more for her than I did for myself. So they had developed a reputation, and a lot of dog people flew them and then stopped because they stopped at brand promise. So I think it's something that we do a lot. One of the questions that you and I have talked about before is that I always teach people to ask the question, is this strengthening or weakening my brand?
Yeah.
If it's not strengthening it, you don't do it. Like I had a client say to me the other day that they were interested in adding to their products of what they offered, helping people to travel, to live a life, that travel nomad kind of life, because they loved it. That's how they lived. And I asked the question, is this going to strengthen or weaken your brand? So if it's not going to strengthen it, you can work in different arenas if it strengthens your brand. If it's out of sync with your brand, then you can't do it. So I didn't say to this client, no, you can't do it. I said, you've got to reflect on this question. If you add that business to the businesses that you have now, will that strengthen or weaken your brand?
Yeah, true. It'd be like owning a daycare center and an adult shop.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even think twice about it. It would be like, no. It would just not be. It would violate my trust. So it's a question that I want everybody listening to us. I want you. I do it literally every day. I want my clients to ask the question, is this strengthening or weakening your brand? Every decision that you do in your business should pass that test. If it's not strengthening it, you don't do it. Well, hiring this person, strengthen or weakening my brand. Well, changing my hours, strengthening or weakening my brand. Now, for some businesses, working less hours will strengthen a brand of like family time.
Yeah.
For other businesses, it will weaken the brand of we're being here to serve you whenever it's convenient for you. You have to know what your brand is. So you always have to be asking that question.
But it also fits in with the culture of your business and the team that you've put together. If they all know that we finish at 5:30 and we have activities and family, things that we do from 5:30 onwards, and you make the decision, we're now working until 8 o'clock at night, 4 nights a week, how does that affect the people that are working in your business? Yeah, they want to be part of your team, but now all of a sudden, if you're upsetting your team, that is then going to come across to your patients, customers, and clients. And so does it strengthen or weaken your brand by increasing the hours?
Yeah, and it's not a set answer, because increasing it, you may say, okay, we're going to have late hours, but we're going to have more flexibility. If you want to take an hour off to go or 2 hours off to go watch your kid's game, you can do that.
Yeah.
So it's not a straight answer. And as I said, some companies to work less hours could be positive. Some companies to work more hours can strengthen the brand. So it's always about what's your brand culture, what's your mission, who's your target, how is this serving them. Is it going to solve their problem better if you stay open longer, or is it going to solve their problem worse when you're not teaching them to set boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
it's always got to be in context of the brand and the relationship. It's not about a set, this. It's about asking that question and just infusing that habit in yourself and teaching it to your team, your employees, and even to your people that are coming to, if you've got, for example, go back to your daycare center, your childcare business. One of the things I want is, if I were to have a childcare business, I would want my clients to know what my culture is and what my brand is, and I would want them to be behaving in accordance with it.
Yeah.
So this really goes all the way through. Okay, it really is every part. So that should be just something that we do all the time, whether it's changing our hours, whether it's adding products, whether it's changing the colors of the walls, our stationery. Anything that we do should be asking that question.
So was that all, that's all still part of part 8 though, wasn't it? Not valuing your brand.
That's, number 8, not valuing your brand and not asking that question. It's a lens, okay? It's a lens that you want to be thinking through. And it's always having that lens. Is this strengthening or weakening my brand?
That's a fantastic
question. Am I going
question.
to partner? Am I going to partner with a particular, other company? Will that strengthen my brand or will it weaken my brand? It depends on your brand. It might strengthen one brand. It might weaken yours, or vice versa.
Well, like you said, it's not a yes or no. It's never a clear yes or no question, because, like we were talking about before, increasing your hours, okay, it might upset staff in one way, but hey, if we can give you time off in the afternoon, you can go to your child's sporting events, then that's a positive. So, and then how does the people that are using your business and also teaming up with another company, if that company has the exact same culture and alignment with you, then it's going to work great. But if they're in conflict with you over different reasons, you're very green and they are not, then there's going to be a conflict.
Exactly. And it's not just what affects the obvious bottom line. Is this just going to bring money? It's really looking at all of these factors of a brand fit. Does their brand fit with our brand? Are we complementary brands or are we not?
Yeah.
So that's just in every, same way as I have a question that I teach my clients to ask about everything. Is this bringing me closer or further to who I am, who I want to be, what I want to do here on this planet? This is my branding question. Is this strengthening or weakening my brand? Does it bring me closer or further from accomplishing my mission? Does it bring me closer or further from my relationship with my market? So that's a question that you should be asking every day. Every time there's a business decision, when I walk into my office, when I have my center and I put down magazines, I would ask the question, does having this magazine strengthen or weaken my brand?
The smallest detail, you can ask that question, and if it's not a yes, then it's a no.
Exactly. What people say is either a hell yes or no. If it doesn't strengthen my brand, then, for example, I would not have had kind of magazines that were encouraging teenagers to have more superficial values and to be, to be more magazines that are pushing sex on kids, for example.
Yeah.
That would not have been appropriate in my center. Not that we didn't talk about a lot of sex. I had an integrative health center. We talked about sex, but we talked about it in a context. So every magazine that I had in my center would be in alignment with that.
Well, it's the same as I've seen TV sets in reception areas. Now, going back 10 years ago, didn't seem that long ago, you would never see any nudity on TV, especially during the day, and the F-bomb would never be dropped. Now, during the daytime TV, it's not uncommon for a set of boobies to get flashed across the screen and for a few inappropriate words to actually get dropped. So if you're playing that in your reception area of your business and you've got the midday movie on, that's dangerous, because you don't know who's going to be sitting there at exact time that something comes up that may not, would you let your kids watch it normally? Same thing. Is that show strengthening or weakening your brand?
Exactly. So you're projecting, it becomes part of your brand. So while my brand was in the therapy room, if it was a therapy patient, in the business room, if I was a business mentoring client, anything can be said. At the same time, I had a certain value of respect that I had in terms of what I put out in my waiting room.
Yeah.
So everything goes through that filter. And it's really just developing that filter so that you're thinking about your brand. It's just something you think about all the time. Customer service, product delivery. It's the way I'm delivering this product in alignment with me. You're talking about, like F-bombs. Some businesses can get on stage and they can talk in F-bombs. Other businesses, it would be shocking and you couldn't do it. So
Yeah.
it's really making that question a part of everything that you look at.
I may sound like a bit of a prude, but have I sworn? Yes. Do I swear each day? Probably. Yeah, at some stage or another, I'll do something, especially when I'm on my computer and it's not working. I have been known to curse slightly. But when I go and see someone speak, if they swear and it's an integral part of the story, I have no hassle with it. But when they swear just because they can, I just think, is that all you've got?
And yet I want to say I'm on board with you. I'm not somebody who, would say I never curse. I don't curse a lot on stage, if at all. Um, at the same time, there are some brands that I will tell you it does strengthen their brand. Are there many? Probably not, but are there some brands that really is aligned for them to be freer with their speech? Yes. And it depends on who your audience is.
Which brands are you talking about? I'm curious. Like, I know Gary Vee swears like there's no tomorrow, and Gordon Ramsay swears a lot, but they didn't initially.
Actually, you're right. I'm thinking about Gary Vee when I first met him and first heard him. But his brand has evolved into a certain thing. But I'm thinking about brands that are performers, or a brand that's appealing to a certain segment and wants to be seen a certain way. Now, you and I are not of that target market, but there could be a situation. So I just want to come back to the statement of don't assume it. Actually ask the question, and then don't only look through your own lens. Use your lens because it's your brand, but
Yeah.
also look at the target market and think about how your target market is going to perceive it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So even something like cursing, that I'd say, no, I really, everybody's with that. And it's true, there's so many people now, I can't say everybody, but lots of people are cursing lots on stage. Not what I want to do. I'm not on your podcast cursing. And actually, I've had podcasts say to me, one of our policies is no cursing. Now, it's not an issue because I don't curse on a podcast, but I have had podcast hosts hand out a list of rules before I went on. And one of the rules were we don't swear here.
Yeah.
So that, it's really antithetical to their brand. But I do want to say, look at your audience, because there could be certain brands that are going to feel more comfortable, more spoken to, that you're part of them. So you've got to look at your brand culture, your mission, your vision, all of those things, and ask that question. It's so many levels of don't assume the answer. Ask the question with an opened, discerning mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. We should move on to number 9.
Okay, number 9, not growing your brand and doing it in alignment. So we've got two sides of this coin. On the one hand, we have the side of a coin where people don't grow it and it gets stale, stale for the customers, stale for the times, stale for us. It gets boring. But we also have the opposite, where people are shifting brands too often, or they're shifting a course. So I'll have a rule that you can shift your brand, and you do always want to keep freshening it, tweaking it a little bit, freshening it. At the same time, you've got to be very careful about making a core value shift. So, for example, if you're going to go from let's go back to your daycare center. If you want to go from the daycare center to an adult business, or if you want to go from one business, maybe an adult business, to a family-oriented business, it's not so easy to shift a core value. And you do have to have a really good reason. One reason that we see a lot now is that times have changed. Things that people accepted or shrugged their shoulders about 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago now are no, you've got to be much more cautious about them. Sometimes we've made a mistake. And if somebody's made a mistake, then they might have to shift a value. They've grown, they've seen something different, something's happened in their life. So this issue of growing your brand, again, requires discernment. It requires thoughtfulness. You want to grow your brand. You want to keep it fresh for you, for your clients. You want to keep your marketing fresh. You want to adjust it, but you don't want to do huge shifts too often, because then you'll lose that trust factor. They want to know at the core who you are. And if you make a core shift, you need a really good reason, and you can't do that too often.
Okay, so you've got to grow the brand. It's got to stay in alignment, but you can't do too big a shift too fast. So I'll use podiatry as an example because it's an industry I know. So you may have had a very generalized clinic that may have been targeted towards diabetes and older people, and all of a sudden you go, no, I want to be a sports clinic. So you can't just do this complete shift over to becoming a sports clinic and expecting all those patients to go, oh yeah, we're cool with that. It's got to be a slow transition or a good reason behind you've done the shift.
Or a core value that stays the same. So let's say you're making a transition, and you make a transition because you've said, maybe you've had a clinic. Let's even go more out there. You've had a traditional medical practice. And now all of a sudden you're bringing in alternative complementary healthcare.
Yep.
Things that you might have even talked against, but your core value has always been integrity and deliver the best to my patients. So all of a sudden you're bringing in something complementary, something totally you've never done before, and patients are going like, what? Then you need to explain it to them in terms of your core, that my core is always to bring you the best. And that was the best I knew at the time. Now my wife was ill, or my child was ill, and I saw some of the limits of what traditional medicine offered. And I saw that if we married traditional medicine and complementary medicine, I could serve you better. So a lot of those things that I was closed to 5 years ago, I didn't know. So now you've kept in line with your core value of bringing the best, being honest, being authentic. You've made a big shift. You will possibly lose some clients, some patients, but you may not, because you haven't hurt your core value of bringing them the best, of caring about them, even to the point where you're willing to say, you know what? I was wrong. I didn't get it. I didn't realize that there were limits on certain medical procedures for certain situations, and that if you add complementary care, you weren't being woo or flaky, but you were bringing patients the best. Now in best conscious, I cannot bring this to you. And I'm bringing it to you in the most expert researched way I can. So if you make a big shift, you have to really be bringing your tribe, okay, your branded tribe along with you. But it's best if it's in line with the core value you've had all along.
Okay, so, but if the core value shifts too much, that's where it really falls out of sync.
That's where it's going to be huge. And I think we're seeing a lot of the tidal waves of that in society. Things that we used to accept are not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it happens because we've shifted. Sometimes it happens because the market has shifted and we want to make money. But sometimes it's happened, which we're seeing almost a tsunami of now, that cultures have shifted. So things that would have been totally accepted or not, and things that would have been totally unacceptable are now considered totally acceptable, and in fact the right thing to do. And it doesn't go back that long. I think about, when my kids were born, how things were. If I think about when I was growing up, we're having really huge shifts. So when you have a brand, you've got to grow it. You've got to keep it fresh with the times. Times change. You have to be aware. And then this issue of core values is huge. So again, there's a lot of different aspects, but keep in mind that whole, it always goes back to alignment.
Yeah.
Is this aligned with who I am, with who my market is, with what I stand for? If you stay in integrity with that, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, it's true. And some of those things too, you see like how times have changed because of like television movies. A lot of times movies will be made and it'll be based on a historical piece. And it's only going back, say, maybe 30 or 40 years ago. And you'll watch that TV show, especially a show like Mad Men. I don't know if you've watched Mad Men at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking you through that whole advertising industry over that period of time. And there were just so many things that happened on that particular show that you watched it and you went, well, that was only like 50 years ago or 40 years ago that's what our thinking was. And how much things have shifted over that 40 or 50 years. But really, it changed very slowly, year by year. But in reflection, it seems like it's been a big shift, but it was very gradual.
Exactly. I mean, it's interesting, just thinking back, when you think of those times, like I think about, there was a period of time that I was working in schools. And when I was working in schools, it was very customary to hug kids.
Yeah.
We just did. If you were a loving teacher, if you were an administrator, if you were working with kids in an after-school program. When I was in college, I had a group of kids in an after-school program that I worked with. I took them to my mother's house. Okay, I lived further away. I was in college, but they were about 20 minutes from my mother's house. I used to take a group of kids to my mother's house for dinner. Now, that's not something you would do today.
No.
And yet that was something that was really valued. The fact that I would do that after hours on my own time, out of my own, my own pocket, that was considered something that was great. And today the boundaries are very, very different. And yet we have other boundaries today that, we can't even compare them. They're so much more lax, if even non-existent. So you've got to be very aware of all of those things and how they impact your brand. So can we go to number 10?
Yes. Move on to number 10, which is the last point.
Yeah, it is the last point of the 10 biggest mistakes.
It's the last point of the 10 biggest mistakes, but if we have time, I want to touch on, and I did write it down, branding's cousin, which was influence. But we'll touch on that at the end after we get through point number 10.
Absolutely. So let's talk about number 10. I mean, anybody listening to this, your mind may be just firing and you may be thinking about other branding mistakes. And there are lots of branding mistakes. These are 10 big ones that if you fix these, you're going to be in really good shape with your brand. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, that I see, and as I said, with my background as both a business mentor and a therapist, is personal issues affecting your brand.
Oh,
okay. So this, no surprise that this would be my favorite. Personal issues affecting your brand. And so let me give you a couple of examples.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And I also want to address that statement. It's not personal, it's business. I want to say it's always personal.
Oh, that shits me, that statement. I'm sorry. But I remember I had a falling out with someone many years ago. I was going to this conference and I used to bang heads with the association and the boards on a regular basis because I always like to just step outside. I'd never step outside the rules. I would just go right on the border and I'd sort of wave at them a little bit. Anyway, this one particular time I was having this run-in with the association. We were having this big argument over something. A friend of mine that I'd known for a few years, anyway, there's a conference, it was in Port Douglas, I rock along to it, and I go and sit down with her, and she goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting here with you." And she went, "It's not personal, but I know that at the moment you're having a few arguments with the association. I know they're all just sitting over there. Would you mind if you actually sat somewhere else? It's not personal, it's business." And I went, "So you're saying with me sitting next to you, you're concerned what other members on the association are going to think?" And she went, "Yeah." And I went, "You're an idiot." And I got up and sat. I got up and sat somewhere. I've never spoken to her since.
Right. It's always personal. And if we forget that, not only are we going to piss a lot of people off, is it not only is it personal from our side, but if we forget that for our customers, our clients, our market, if we think for a minute that it's not personal for them, we're just, playing dumb.
Yeah.
It is personal for everybody. How you connect, how you treat people. Connection is at the core. And disconnection is at the core of every issue there is. So if we forget that it's personal and we stop treating our market like we care about them, like we understand them, like we're serving them, like we're treating them in a personal way, like they can tell that we are understanding and caring, we are really harming our business. So whether we're talking about it's not business, it's not personal, it's business, any level, it's always got a core of personal.
Yeah.
And when we look at our brand, one, if we forget that, we're going to be, in trouble, because our customers want to know that we care about them personally. No matter how big a company is, they want to know that we care about them personally. But the other part is that our personal issues influence all the branding mistakes that we've talked about so far.
In
Okay,
what context?
Okay, so if you have a personal issue, for example, let's say you're afraid of success. Okay, everybody always talks about fear of failure, but I always like to talk about fear of success, because I think in the market, most of our listeners, there is some fear of failure, but I think a lot of them have a lot of fear of being as big and as successful, and the implications of that. I see that in my practice.
But I had someone recently say to me, "Oh, I would hate to have do such and such, and all of a sudden be making $1 million a year, because I'd hate to see how that money would affect my children and turn them into spoiled brats." And I'm like, seriously? I go,
Seriously.
yeah, and so that's actually an honest fear of some people, that if I do become successful, and I make a lot of money, they're concerned, how are they going to react to that money? How will they be seen by other people? How will that money affect their children? And yeah, I've never looked at it that way. Yeah, it's interesting.
A lot of people think money will bring out the worst. A lot of people feel if my business gets too big, I'm going to be under too much scrutiny. Just one of the things we've been talking about. Or they feel that maybe their health won't be able to support the amount of business they have.
Yeah.
Or they won't have family time. Or they don't deserve it. Or somebody's going to find out, things about them. Like they're going to get to that edge of their success, and it's going to become visible.
Oh, and all the skeletons will come out of the closet.
All kinds of things. So that's a big concern. So one of the things that people do is they don't say, gee, I'm going to hold myself back. But that works unconsciously. And they might not define their brand strategy, or they might have a personal issue with consistency. And so they might not infuse their brand every place, or they might not lead their brand because they don't like to be too visible. We could go through a range of issues. Visibility, relationship might be hard. Being close to people might be hard.
I was at a conference recently, and there was one guy I was talking to in particular, but I know a number of people who, they've got podiatry businesses. Their businesses are doing okay, quite successful. But on social media, they use a completely different name to who they are in their business. And I go, well, why aren't you the same? Oh, I couldn't find you on Facebook. Oh, no, I don't use my name on Facebook because I don't want patients to find me. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. Is that part of like that a slight fear of success, that they've got the business, but they want to keep their personal life really separate from it so that nobody sees what they're doing outside of work?
For some people, it's, again, there's no formulaic answer. There's no, this is the way it is for everybody. There are different personal issues, but I will tell you that unless, I could say unless lack of knowledge is affecting you, but even lack of knowledge, if you're smart and you're in business, it's generally a personal issue that's keeping you from having the knowledge about how to have a successful brand.
Okay.
So just follow that for a second. So 5 years ago, people really didn't know much about brands, and people are learning. I mean, you and I were talking before we started recording that there's so many things that are new that, we're talking about that are new insights and new perspectives. But if you're personally aligned and your issues aren't interfering, you are going to seek out the information that you need to have a successful brand and a successful business. So it can be fear of failing that makes you not go further. It can be fear of success. It can be fear of can be so many things. It can be fear of just being stretched too thin. It can be fear of not handling stress. It can be fear of not wanting so many people to see you, just what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Not wanting to have another persona. It can be not wanting to expose your children to people seeing your business. But if we look at some of them, like let's take power connecting. That was one we discussed on part 2. Really
Yeah, that
deeply
was number 4.
connecting. Number 4, we discussed it on the second episode. So what interferes with power connecting? It can be somebody who has relationship issues, intimacy issues, somebody who looks at the world through their own lens and doesn't know how to connect. They don't know how to look and say, okay, what does our product do for you? Who does it make you become? How are we serving you? You can be too wrapped up in your own world. Or you can have somebody that's so wrapped up in somebody else's world that they can't develop a business and a brand they can sustain. They can look at, oh, what do I think the world wants from me?
Yeah.
And they create this business in a vacuum that isn't in alignment with what they can do. Maybe they create a business where they're giving too many hours of the day. They're serving clients that can't afford to pay them. They're doing things because they want to, their heart wants to, do some things, but they can't say no. In fact, I had a colleague whose husband got in some trouble legally. And I was asked to write a report and do some testimony. And when I was talking to the lawyer, I said, what this person is guilty of is they have a hard time disappointing people. I said, they weren't out to hurt anybody. They weren't out to break the law, but they had a hard time saying no. If somebody said, can you help me? Their answer was always yes. And so when they were asked to do something that was outside of the law, but they knew the answer, they knew how to help this person. The person said, can you help me do this? And they just, in their heart of hearts, they knew how to do it. They couldn't say, I know how to do it, but I can't. It's against the law.
Okay, so it's like outside of their scope of practice.
Right. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes people mess up their brand. Now that was definitely, they messed up their brand. But sometimes the brand is messed up because you don't have the boundary. You don't have the ability to say no. You care too much. I'm not saying you shouldn't care a lot, but there's a difference between caring a lot and giving yourself away.
So you're saying, like, so if I use podiatry as an example again, there might be a minor surgical procedure you might do on someone's toenail. Yeah, I'm allowed to do that down there at the foot, give an injection, do that type of thing. But if you had a friend come to you with a problem with their thumbnail, and you're going, I know I can treat that because it's the same process. I can give the injection, I can do the procedure, I can take out part of the nail. But my scope of practice says, Tyson, you are not allowed to do surgery on someone's thumb. Personally saying yes because you know you could help that person could get you in a spot of bother.
Exactly. And so when I say it's a personal issue, there might be times, let's say you're out in the boonies and somebody's bleeding and you need to help them and it's outside of your scope of practice. I would do it. I would risk being outside of my scope. But when somebody can't say no because they either have no boundaries or they can't disappoint somebody, that's a personal issue that I can guarantee you is going to mess up their brand.
Okay.
So when somebody has a brand that's not working or they don't have an aligned brand strategy, and I know that they're somebody who's capable, I'm going to look at knowledge. And if they have trouble with it, the place that I'm going to look is where it's hitting up against their issues. So I have a very clear perspective that once knowledge is available, if you don't have a personal issue and you're a smart business person, you're going to go out and you're going to find it. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this was 5 years ago about branding because we've advanced, a ways. But when I look at business mistakes, and it's the kind of thing where you smack your head and you said, how did that person do that? They're really smart. Or when somebody says to me, I can't figure this out, or I don't know where to get this information, or I just can't implement it, then I'm going to look at where is it hitting them in terms of their personal issues. And we've talked about a few of them, but there are many more. There are issues that have to do with their family. There are issues that have to do with their health. There are issues that they have to do with their own sense of what they believe is possible in the world.
But it even comes back to like politics. Like I mentioned before about, we had a federal election recently, and there's been a few business people on there who have, been nasty to other people on social media because they had a different political view. And it wasn't that they said something that was really, it wasn't that the first person said something that was negative. All they said was who they voted for. And the next person's come and said, you are an idiot for voting that, and giving them all these reasons why. And I'm there sitting back just watching the conversation going, this is affecting your personal brand. This is affecting your business brand. You've just said that 50% of the people that probably use your business, because most people politically are split down the middle when you look at it, across the board, that you've just told 50% of the people that possibly could be using your business that they are idiots because you just called this person an idiot. And all they said was who they voted for. And I went, that is dangerous territory.
And I want to get back to that issue, the branding mistake number 10. Where that comes from is, as a society, we're getting more and more into an us against them, okay, which hurts our brand, but it comes from an us against ourselves. Because if you're not out disconnected and hurting yourself, you're not going to do something that's going to screw up your brand so badly. Yeah. You're not going to be out us against other people. You're not going to do that. And you're not going to be doing something that hurts your business. So it goes back to personal issues.
So with looking at these 10 things that we've gone over these 3 episodes, this number 10, even though it was the 10th one, to me is almost like one of the most important ones, because you can get everything else right, and then you can get up there and go bleh on social media, say or do something that is a deep personal issue that can just ruin everything, all the hard work you've done.
I'm going to say it even stronger. I'm going to say that depending on the issue, you can't get the other 9 right. Or if you get them right, you can't sustain them. So you can't, you're going to mess it up someplace if you've got an issue that is the type of issues that's going to interfere with your branding. So it is the most key. In terms of the others, we could order them somewhat. We could say this one is more important, but they all overlap. But this is the most foundational. You have to be connected. You have to be clearest within yourself. You have to be operating in that no doubt zone with you. And if you're not clear, if you're disconnected, if you're not able to be in relationship, if you're not able to own your success, if you're not able to have your boundaries, we could go on and on with so many different issues, you will not be able to either create or sustain a business brand that serves you and your clients for the long haul.
Oh, that is fantastic advice. Now, I know we're coming up on the hour of talking, which, like, you and I can talk for a long time. But just before we finish up, just wanted to touch on how branding, or how the cousin of branding is influence.
Okay, and I think we should just touch on it, and we might have to make that another episode.
Yeah, might have to do that for another one.
We might have to do that for another one, because this, it's too big a topic, but I think it is important to mention, because where branding has been the buzzword for the last number of years, one of the things that's coming up now that everybody's talking about is influence. I want to be an influencer. And when somebody wants to be an influencer, not the kind of person that's paid to represent somebody else's brand, but the kind of people that you and I tend to work with more, and that are more likely to be our listeners, people who want to be the influencer in their industry. They want to be the go-to. So I think a nice way to sum this up, and then we can come back and revisit it, is that one of the key factors in your brand, in being a successful influencer, is that your brand be aligned. And one of the things in being having a successful brand is that you as an influencer can communicate and connect and be in relationship with it. So they are very close cousins. You can't bring that brand. People want to be influencers because they want to have, we're not talking about when it's about ego, but they want to be, they want to have impact. They want to have income. They want to make that difference in the world. They want to have a legacy. So to do that, having a brand that's in place and not making all the mistakes we talked about, but the positive side of all of that is something that is essential. Okay, it's essential. A strong brand, a growing brand, a fresh brand is essential. That number 10 about who you are and your ability to evolve and be who you need to be to create that brand, you need to be who you need to be that influencer that can lead that brand. So we talked about brand leadership. An influencer needs to lead that brand.
Okay.
So the two are very, very related. And influence, it's about the brand, it's about the strategies and tactics, and it's about being that person. Those personal issues again, being who you need to be to lead your business, your brand, and to be a person of influence.
So it's when you're talking about, the brand must be aligned, and you were talking about how brand and influence are similar to each other. Does it get clouded? Because when we're talking about influencers and not just about being famous and, like you and I throwing on some swimwear and strutting our stuff out there and getting our photograph taken and influencing the world, is there confusion over like brand, your brand, and then say being a brand ambassador for a particular product, which I think some influencers are more brand ambassadors more than a brand of a business, their own business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's interesting. I don't find that confusion exists as much in the general public because they don't think about influencers in the industry and thought leaders the way we do.
Yeah.
They kind of know people who are more those brand ambassadors, or on the other side of it, they don't even know that, and they just know about thought leadership. So it's those of us that know a lot more that get in trouble with this and get confused and kind of how did I discover that? I asked my market. I started asking people. So yes, there can be confusion among brand ambassadors, people who are getting paid or getting favors or getting something to represent a brand because they have a big tribe and a lot of influence. Although there's a lot of stuff coming out lately that there's a lot of people with supposed social media influence and they go to sell things and it's not happening. But what we're talking about here are people who want to be influencers in their field and they want to have a brand that's aligned with that. We're talking about thought leadership, people who have impact, that want to be known in their industry, that want to make a difference in the world. It's not about bringing somebody else's product out. It's about leadership in a fundamental way.
So it's like people listening to this, and if they're in any particular industry, whether it's the health industry, finance, whatever, there'll be people in their industry which are actually big influencers in the industry. And if you have a look at them and you have a look at their brand, they're actually aligned really well. But there's other people who might be in your industry who are paid by a particular company. They're more of a brand ambassador for a particular company. And sometimes it all relates, that brand, being a brand ambassador, their personal brand and being an influencer is actually tied in really well. So there's a guy I know who's been on my other podcast, a Podiatry Legends podcast, and I copied the episode onto this podcast as well, Simon Bartold. And in the podiatry industry, he is an influencer. He always fits his brand. He's always on brand. Every time you see him, you talk to him, super nice guy, always on brand. But he's been a brand ambassador for multiple shoe companies over a number of years. But it all ties in beautifully to what he actually does.
That's a great point. So even as a brand ambassador, he has his own brand that he is very, he knows how to use it. He knows how to keep it fresh. He knows how to grow it. He knows how to monetize it. So branding and influence are different, but they're totally, as we're talking about, related. And I'm glad we're just bringing it up and touching on it now, because the way people used to ask me, and they still ask about branding, but that was the hot thing a few years ago. Now I'm having so many entrepreneurs and experts coming to me and they're saying, I want to be an influencer in my field. How do I do that? And so that's where your brand is really important. That's where becoming who you need to be able to lead that brand, as well as having the strategies and the tactics.
I've got to get you back to talk about this more, because this is just really got my mental juices flowing at the moment. I've got so many questions on this particular subject because it's such a big thing at the moment. My daughter's 15 this year, my youngest daughter, and she's constantly on YouTube and Instagram and just following these different people who are influencers in certain areas. I don't think anyone that has a daughter that's 15 and under who does not know who James Charles is. I got a friend, another guy who's in his late 40s, Dr. Jesse Green, and him and I are there talking about our daughters, and we're talking about James Charles, and he's going, why are we talking about makeup? This is just ridiculous. That's how big an influence some of these people have on society.
Right. So that's a great point. It's influencers influence business, they influence health, they influence relationships, they influence society, and you can really learn to be an influencer in your family, in your friend circle. It's not always, a lot of the principles are very similar, and not everybody wants to be this influencer on this larger scale. We're looking at micro niches, people being influencers in small arenas and having a lot of clout, a lot of influence. But even in the personal life, the issue of influence is becoming more and more key to people. So that's something that'd be fun to talk about in the future.
I think it would be. So in summary, do you have a final point? We've gone over these 10 over 3 episodes. There will be links in the show notes, and I will have links on how they. Oh, just before I get you to answer this last question, how can people reach out to Dr. K if they want to talk to you? Even though we've mentioned it in the other episodes, let's mention it again.
If they want to talk to me, if they want to ask a question, they want to find out about workshops, go to my website. There's a contact page, drkazlow.com. You'll have the link to my website. I'd love to talk to you. So whether it's a question, whether it's feedback, whether it's something else you want us to talk about, or to know about programs that are available, go to my website and reach out.
That'd be cool. So give us one final tip. We've done these 10. Somebody's listening to this now. What's one final tip to finish up on this particular subject of branding?
Be authentic.
Well, that was easy. There we go. We've just summed it all up. Be authentic.
Yep. Be authentic and pay attention. Be conscious and authentic. This is key to your business. Make it fun, but be authentic. Don't try and do what you think a cool brand is. Don't try and be a mimicker of your competitor. Be yourself in alignment, in relationship with your market, your purpose, your mission.
That is awesome advice. And Dr. K, I want to thank you once again for, this will be the 4th episode you've been on It's No Secret with Dr. T. We're going to have to change your name soon. So It's No Secret with Dr. T and Dr. K. So thank you very much for coming on one more time. And I've got to get you back to talk about the whole influencing world.
I'm honored. I'm honored that you've had me back. I'm honored to do this. I appreciate you, your wisdom, what you're doing. And it always elevates my thinking to the next level when you and I get together and share with your audiences.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Fern Kazlow, or Dr. K as we like to call her, in this 3-part series of the top 10 branding mistakes. So just a reminder that part 2 was episode 165 and part 1 was a bit further back on episode 140. But all the links will be in the show notes on each of those particular episodes, so you can listen to them back to back whenever you feel like it. And you can tell your friends about it. Which leads me on to, if you've been enjoying It's No Secret with Dr. T, please tell your friends about it. Let them know this podcast exists. And if you happen to have your podcast player in your hand right now, please go on there and give us a review. Tell people what you think. A 3-star review is better than no review at all, but I'd prefer a 5-star review. So next week, I have Brad Sugars, who was the instigator of Action Coach, which is one of the biggest coaching businesses in the world. So he is the guest next week, so make sure you tune in for that one. And just as a quick reminder, my book, It's No Secret, There's Money in Small Business, is available wherever you like to purchase your books from. So in Australia, they are in bookstores. If it's not there, you can go up and ask for it and say, why is Tyson Franklin's book not in this bookshop? Or like I said, go to Amazon, Booktopia, wherever you normally purchase your books, or you can get it from my website, tysonfranklin.com. So that's it from me. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.